What's up, Vikings Kingdom? Hold on to your purple and gold, because what I'm about to tell you will shake you to your core. The stories coming out of Egan this week aren't just news, they're seismic shifts that could define our entire season. We're talking about a hidden gem who's about to explode onto the scene, a devastating blow that'll make you question everything, an emotional homecoming that'll hit you right in the feels, and two potential moves that could completely change our championship destiny. You think you know what's happening with this team? Think again. The next 20 minutes will reveal 5 stories that every single member of Vikings Nation needs to understand before we take the field against Chicago. But before we dive into this chaos, I need you to smash that like button, because what you're about to hear isn't just speculation, it's the reality that's unfolding right now in Minnesota. Are you ready to discover who Jonathan Greenard is calling a dog, and why he believes this unknown player could be the difference between playoff heartbreak and Super Bowl glory? Let's find out together. Deep in the trenches of the Minnesota Vikings defensive line, where battles are won and lost in milliseconds, there's a story brewing that most people don't even know exists. While everyone's talking about our superstar acquisitions, Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen, there's another name that should be on your radar, and his teammate Jonathan Greenard is making sure we don't forget it. This isn't about a first-round pick or a big money free agent signing. This is about a player who went from being completely unknown to earning the respect of Pro Bowl pass rushers, and his journey might just embody everything this Vikings team represents. Jonathan Greenard, a man who knows what it takes to dominate NFL offensive lines, has some powerful words about his teammate that should make every Vikings fan sit up and take notice. When asked about Jaylen Redmond, Greenard didn't hesitate. "Oh, J-Red is a dog. J-Red has been a dog since last year at camp. I knew he was a dog when he got kicked out of practice last year at camp." Now, coaches hate practice fights, but players? They respect them, especially when they're not involved. For Greenard, seeing Redmond get ejected from practice wasn't a red flag. It was a signal that something special was brewing in that unknown player who wasn't even drafted and had spent time in the XFL. A defensive tackle wearing number 61 doesn't exactly scream intimidation at first glance, but sometimes the most dangerous weapons come in unexpected packages. Greenard continued, painting a picture of transformation that should excite every fan. From that day forward, he got kicked out, came back, and was just completely dominating opponents. And at that moment, even seeing that throughout the season and seeing him continually evolve, everybody knew he had some other gear. But when you bring in two guys like Hargrave and Allen, you think he gets pushed aside or something like that, or he falls behind. But here's where this story gets absolutely incredible. The scene is set, and it's more devastating than any Vikings fan could imagine. Picture this: the excitement of preseason football, the hope of a comeback story, the anticipation of watching a talented player return to the field after a year of rehabilitation and determination. Rondale Moore had spent an entire year battling back from a dislocated right knee that kept him out of the entire 2024 season with the Atlanta Falcons. The former second-round pick had signed with Minnesota, ready to be their punt returner and provide depth in a wide receiver room that desperately needed reliable hands. 1 year and 2 days after his devastating injury in Atlanta, Moore stepped onto the field at US Bank Stadium, lined up to return a punt from the Houston Texans, and in that moment, every Vikings fan held their breath with anticipation. Rondale Moore took the punt cleanly, showed that burst of speed that made him special at Purdue, tried to get to the outside, but then came the tackle along the sideline that changed everything. The sound of the hit, the way he immediately grabbed his left leg, the silence that fell over the stadium. It was the kind of moment that makes your stomach drop and your heart race for all the wrong reasons. This wasn't just any injury. This was the cruel continuation of a nightmare that had already stolen 1 full season from a young man who had worked tirelessly to get back to this exact moment. Head coach Kevin O'Connell's words afterward painted the devastating picture. Pretty significant injury to the left knee. After an MRI on Sunday confirmed everyone's worst fears, the official diagnosis came down like a sledgehammer: season-ending knee injury. Rondale Moore, The player who had battled back from the depths of injury hell would miss his second consecutive full NFL season. Can you imagine the emotional devastation? The mental toll of working for an entire year, grinding through rehabilitation, believing in your comeback, signing with a new team that believed in you, and then having it all taken away on your very first snap. Vikings fans reacted with the kind of heartbreak that transcends football. So bummed for him. Pray for a good and successful recovery, one fan wrote, capturing the collective anguish of a fan base that knows what it's like to have hope crushed. Another fan perfectly summarized the cruel irony. He put all that work in to get back just for this. You gotta feel for him. But this story isn't just about one player's heartbreak. It's about how one devastating moment can reshape an entire team's season. The emotions are running high in Minnesota, and they're about to get even more intense because a familiar face is walking back through those doors at the TCO Performance Center, bringing with him a flood of memories, unfinished business, and questions that have haunted Vikings Kingdom for years. Stefon Diggs, the man whose Minneapolis miracle will forever be etched in franchise lore, returned to his old stomping grounds wearing New England Patriots gear, and the sight of him in anything other than purple and gold hit different than anyone expected. This wasn't just any homecoming. This was the return of a player whose departure created the butterfly effect that brought us Justin Jefferson, but whose absence still leaves a complex mix of emotions in every Vikings fan's heart. As Diggs stood on the same practice fields where he once made magic happen, surrounded by teammates and coaches who remembered the highs and lows of his Minnesota journey, he opened up about his time here in a way that revealed the man behind the headlines. When asked by Diana Rossini if there was anything he would have done differently during his time in Minnesota, Diggs' response was raw and honest. Not necessarily. Obviously, everything happens for a reason. I built a lot of important relationships that made me who I am today. If I'd done something different, I wouldn't be the player or the man I am now. These weren't the words of someone bitter about his departure or regretful about his past. These were the words of someone who had grown, matured, and gained perspective on a situation that once seemed contentious but now appears to have been necessary for everyone's growth. Diggs continued, revealing a vulnerability that few knew existed. Growing pains. Being a young player, being a young adult, figuring it out for yourself. I don't have a father figure, so I was kind of figuring it out as I went along. The weight of those words hits hard when you realize that some of the drama and frustration that led to his departure might have simply been a young man trying to find his way without the guidance many of us take for granted. But perhaps the most telling moment came when Diggs addressed the elephant in the room, the reputation that has followed him from team to team. The trade winds are swirling around NFL headquarters, and the Minnesota Vikings find themselves in a position where they might need to make a move that could define their season before it even begins. With their wide receiver room suddenly looking thinner than a frozen Minnesota lake, the front office is undoubtedly burning up phone lines, and there's one conversation that should be happening right now between Minneapolis and Kansas City. The Chiefs are sitting on a treasure trove of wide receiver talent, and buried beneath their depth chart is a player who could be exactly what the Vikings need to solve their immediate crisis. Skyy Moore, the 24-year-old Western Michigan product who was a second-round pick just 3 years ago, finds himself on the outside looking in at a Kansas City roster that's overflowing with talent. Two-time Super Bowl champion, young, hungry, and potentially available for the right price. This isn't just speculation. This is opportunity knocking at Minnesota's door with a sledgehammer. Now, I know what you're thinking. His stats aren't impressive. He's barely seen the field. Why would we want him? But here's the reality check Vikings fans need to understand. Skyy Moore has been buried behind an embarrassment of riches in Kansas City. When you're competing for targets with Travis Kelce, Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy, Juju Smith-Schuster, and Hollywood Brown in Patrick Mahomes' offense, it's not exactly easy to showcase your talents. Sometimes the best diamonds are found in the deepest mines, and Moore might be exactly that kind of hidden gem waiting for the right opportunity to shine. Think about what Minnesota could offer him. Immediate playing time. A chance to be the number 2 receiver until Jordan Addison returns from suspension, and the opportunity to prove himself in an offense that could desperately use his speed and championship experience. For the Chiefs, it's a chance to get value for a player who might not make their final roster anyway. For the Vikings, it's a chance to add a player who knows what it takes to win at the highest level and has been learning from one of the greatest quarterback-coach combinations in NFL history. The compensation wouldn't need to be significant. Maybe a 5th or 6th round pick, potentially with conditions based on playing time or performance. It's the kind of low-risk, high-reward move that could pay massive dividends if Moore finds his groove in Minnesota's system. Can you imagine, JJ? McCarthy having another reliable target to take pressure off Justin Jefferson? Can you picture Skyy Moore now finally getting the chance to show what he can do when he's not competing with 5 other elite options for touches? This isn't just about filling a roster spot. This is about finding a player who could develop into something special in the right environment. But wait, there's another move brewing that could be even more intriguing, and it involves poaching talent from one of our most hated NFC North rivals. Sometimes the best acquisitions come from the most unexpected places. And right now, there's a player sitting in Green Bay who might be exactly what the Vikings need, even if his recent performance suggests otherwise. Mecole Hardman is a name that should be familiar to anyone who follows championship football. 3-time Super Bowl champion, proven track record as a boom or bust weapon for Patrick Mahomes, and now finding himself in the unfamiliar position of being on the outside looking in with the Green Bay Packers after a preseason performance that can only be described as disastrous. In the Packers' first preseason game against the Jets, Hardman managed to drop a pass, muff a punt, and field another punt inside the 5-yard line, causing the Green Bay coaching staff to immediately bump him down their depth chart and put him on notice. For most teams, that kind of performance would be a red flag. For the Vikings, in their current situation, it might be an opportunity disguised as someone else's problem. Here's the thing about Mecole Hardman. Yes, he only caught 12 balls for 90 yards last year and hasn't scored a receiving touchdown since 2022. But championships aren't won by perfect statistical lines. They're won by players who know how to perform when the lights are brightest and the pressure is highest. Hardman has been there, done that, and has the rings to prove it. His experience and speed could be exactly the kind of veteran presence that JJ McCarthy needs as he navigates his first NFL season as a starter. Sometimes teams make moves not because they're perfect solutions, but because they're available solutions that address immediate needs. With Jordan Addison suspended for the first 3 games and Justin Jefferson still dealing with hamstring concerns, the Vikings can't afford to be picky about where their help comes from. If Green Bay decides they don't want Hardman and he becomes available, Minnesota should absolutely be making a call. The idea of adding a 3-time Super Bowl champion who has thrived as a depth piece before, even if he's coming off a rough preseason showing, makes sense when you consider the alternative of relying entirely on rookies and unproven players to carry the load while your top targets are unavailable. As we reach the end of this emotional roller coaster, one thing becomes crystal clear. The Minnesota Vikings are standing at a crossroads that will define not just their 2025 season, but potentially the trajectory of this franchise for years to come. We've journeyed through stories of hidden gems like Jaylen Redmond earning respect from Pro Bowl teammates, witnessed the heartbreaking reality of Rondale Moore's devastating setback, felt the complex emotions of Stefon Diggs' homecoming, and explored the urgent need for the front office to make moves that could save our season before it spirals out of control. This isn't just another preseason update. This is the reality of what it takes to build a championship team in the modern NFL. Sometimes your heroes come from unexpected places, like an undrafted defensive tackle who fought his way from the XFL to earning praise from Jonathan Greenard. Sometimes your carefully laid plans get derailed by cruel injuries that test not just a player's physical resilience, but their mental fortitude. And sometimes you have to make uncomfortable decisions about acquiring talent from rival teams or taking chances on players with questionable recent performances because championship windows don't stay open forever. The truth is, Vikings Kingdom, we're about to find out what this organization is really made of. Kevin O'Connell and Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah have built something special here, but building it and maintaining it are 2 completely different challenges. The next few weeks will reveal whether they have the courage to make the moves necessary to keep this championship dream alive, or whether they'll let opportunity slip through their fingers while waiting for perfect solutions that might never come. Before you go, I need 3 things from you. Smash that like button if you believe this team has what it takes to overcome these challenges. Drop a comment telling me which move you think would have the biggest impact on our season, and make sure you're subscribed with notifications on, because the story of this Viking season is just getting started. Will Jaylen Redmond become the breakout star that Jonathan Greenard believes he can be? Will the front office make the trades necessary to shore up our wide receiver depth? And most importantly, will this team find a way to turn adversity into the fuel that drives them to their first Super Bowl championship? We're about to find out together, and I promise you won't want to miss a single moment of what happens next in Vikings